It was one of those mornings where the heat seemed to press down on everything. The streets, the buildings, even the people. In this small southern town, mornings weren't peaceful, they were heavy. Everyone knew the unwritten rules. Some people had power, and others were expected to stay in their place. Officer Rick Daniels liked those rules. In fact, he depended on them. With 10 years on the force, he had built himself a reputation. Tough, untouchable, and never afraid to put people in line. Daniels didn't see his badge as a symbol of service. To him, it was a crown, a way to remind everyone who was in charge. That morning, he was cruising down Main Street in his police SUV, sipping coffee and feeling pretty good about himself. His shift had barely started when something caught his eye. A black woman standing confidently on the steps of the police station, talking on her phone. There was nothing illegal about what she was doing. She wasn't blocking traffic. She wasn't causing a scene. But to Daniels, her confidence felt like a challenge. In his mind, she wasn't supposed to look so sure of herself. Not here, not in front of his station. He slowed the SUV, rolled down his window, and glared at her. She didn't look away. That irritated him even more. Daniels parked, swung open the door, and strutted toward her with that walk. The kind of walk meant to intimidate. He pulled his sunglasses down, just enough to make sure she could see his eyes. "You got business here?" he barked. She ended her call, without rushing, and tucked her phone into her bag. Her voice was calm when she answered. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Something about the way she said it got under his skin. No apology. No nervous shuffle. Just certainty. He scoffed. "No, see, that's not how this works. You don't get to just stand around here like you own the place. Move along." The woman tilted her head slightly, studying him like she was taking mental notes. "Is that how you talk to everyone? Or just people who look like me?" Her words hit him like a jab, but instead of reflecting, he doubled down. Daniels wasn't used to being questioned, especially not by someone he thought he had power over. "You watch your tone," he growled, stepping closer. But she didn't move an inch. She wasn't flinching. She wasn't scared. And for some reason, that made him even angrier. So he did something that would come back to haunt him. He spat. Right there, on the pavement between them. Close enough that droplets splashed onto her polished shoes. It was an act meant to humiliate, to assert dominance. He muttered under his breath. "Learn your place." The street was quiet, but the moment felt loud. Her eyes slowly dropped to her shoes, then back up to his face. There was no fear there. No anger. Just disappointment. And then she spoke, her voice calm and controlled in a way that made his stomach tighten. "You just made the biggest mistake of your career." Daniels laughed, a harsh, sarcastic sound. "Lady, you have no idea who you're dealing with." But the truth, the twist that would turn his world upside down, was that he had no idea who she was. The silence after Officer Daniels spat on the ground was heavy, like the air before a storm. Most people he confronted would have either shouted back or quickly walked away. That was how Daniels liked it. Either he won by scaring them off, or he won by escalating until they broke. But this woman didn't give him either satisfaction. Instead, she took a slow breath, as though she had all the time in the world. Then she asked, calmly and clearly, "Are you finished?" Her tone threw him off. It wasn't sarcastic, it wasn't timid. It was steady, like she was in control of the situation. Daniels, thinking she was mocking him, puffed out his chest and grinned smugly. "Oh, I'm just getting started," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. She raised one eyebrow. "Good, because now it's my turn to talk." Those words stopped him in his tracks. Nobody talked to him like that. Not in this town, not standing on the steps of his police station. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Your turn? Lady, you don't get a turn here." But she didn't move. She didn't back away. She didn't even blink. She stepped forward, just enough to make him notice, and looked him directly in the eye. "You think that badge gives you power," she said. "But all it's done today is expose you." Daniel's grin faltered for the briefest moment, though he quickly forced it back. "You're real bold for someone who's about to get arrested," he snapped. Her reply was so calm, it almost felt rehearsed. "Arrested? For standing on public property? For existing in a space you think you own? Go ahead. Put the cuffs on me. But I promise you, Officer Daniels, the moment you do, your career is over." And that's when it happened. The first flicker of confusion on his face. "How do you know my name?" he demanded. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "I make it my business to know the people I work with." Those words made no sense to him. Work with? He didn't work with her. He'd never seen her before in his life. He opened his mouth to fire back, but before he could say a word, the station door swung open. Another officer, young, nervous, clearly new to the job, stepped outside. He froze instantly when he saw what was happening. His eyes darted from Daniels to the woman, then back to Daniels. And then, to everyone's surprise, the rookie spoke first. "Chief," he said, his voice cracking with a mix of shock and fear. Daniel spun around so fast his sunglasses nearly flew off his face. "What did you just call her?" The rookie swallowed hard, like he'd just walked into the middle of something he wanted no part of. "Chief Morris," he said, his voice steadier this time. "The mayor said she'd be arriving today." Daniels blinked. He looked at the woman again, suddenly unsure of everything he thought he knew. What, chief?" he stammered. The woman didn't move. She just reached in her bag and pulled out a leather folder, still keeping her gaze locked on him. "You'll find out soon enough," she said softly, almost like a promise. And in that moment, for the first time all morning, Officer Rick Daniels felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt small. The air outside the police station had shifted. Just minutes ago, Officer Rick Daniels had been strutting like he owned the place. Now, he stood frozen, staring at the woman he'd just spat near, as the rookie officer's words echoed in his head. "Chief Morris, that couldn't be true. It had to be a mistake." This is a prank," Daniels said, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "You're messing with me, right? Who even are you?" The woman didn't bother answering him directly. Instead, she opened the leather folder she had pulled from her bag. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper embossed with the city's official seal. She didn't even hand it to Daniels. She passed it to the rookie, who instantly straightened his posture and treated it like it was made of gold. He cleared his throat and read aloud, his voice trembling slightly. "By order of the mayor and city council, Dr. Angela Morris is hereby appointed chief of police for the city of Fairview, effective immediately." Daniels felt his stomach twist into a knot. His mind scrambled to make sense of it. No, he said, shaking his head. "This department's never had a woman chief." And his voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "They'd never put someone like you in charge." Angela Morris finally turned her full attention to him. Her eyes were sharp but calm, the kind of gaze that could cut through excuses before they were even spoken. "Well," she said, "they just did." The rookie officer stepped back like he didn't want to be caught in the blast zone. A couple of other officers, drawn by the commotion, peeked through the station doors. Whispers started to ripple through the group as they realized what was happening. Daniel swallowed hard but tried to save face. "You can't just walk in here in—" "I didn't walk in," Morris interrupted. "I was hired to lead this department. And unfortunately, my first interaction on the job has been with you." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to make the gathering officers go silent. Daniel's bravado wavered. He knew his record wasn't spotless. He also knew the mayor had been under pressure to clean house, as people were calling it. But never in his wildest dreams did he think that meant this. What do you want from me?" he asked, trying to sound defiant, but coming off desperate. Morris didn't flinch. "Respect," she said. "The same respect you owe every person you serve. The kind you clearly haven't been giving." Daniels tried to speak, but she kept going, her voice steady and deliberate. "You see, Officer Daniels, people like you think power comes from fear. But fear is cheap. Real power comes from accountability, and that starts today." The officers watching from the doorway exchanged glances. Some of them looked nervous, but a few seemed almost relieved. Finally, Morris gave him a small, cold smile. "Congratulations," she said. "You've just volunteered to be my first example." By noon, the story had spread through the entire police department like wildfire. Some officers laughed behind closed doors, whispering about how Daniels had messed with the wrong person. Others were nervous, realizing that if Chief Morris was willing to confront someone as bold as Daniels, no one's bad habits were safe. Daniels, on the other hand, was fuming. He paced the locker room like a caged animal, replaying the scene in his head. Every step she had taken, every word she had said, it was burned into his memory. He hated how calm she had been. He hated how she'd made him feel small in front of everyone. But underneath the anger, something else gnawed at him. Fear. Chief Morris didn't waste any time making her presence known. That same afternoon, she called a department-wide meeting. Officers packed into the briefing room, curious to see how this new chief planned to run things. Daniels slouched in his chair, arms crossed, daring her to call him out. She didn't take the bait. Instead, she started with a simple statement. "This department," she said, her voice strong but even, "is about to change." The room went quiet. "For too long, power here has been used as a weapon," she continued. "That ends today. From now on, accountability is not optional. Respect is not optional. Serving the community means protecting everyone, not just the people you like." A few officers shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded. Daniels clenched his jaw. Then she dropped the bombshell. "We're conducting a full review of personnel records. Every complaint, every incident, every misconduct report that's been overlooked, we're reopening them. And we're starting at the top of the list." Her eyes flicked toward Daniels, just for a second, and he felt it like a punch to the chest. That night, she went through his file personally. It was worse than even she expected. Multiple complaints from citizens, several use-of-force incidents swept under the rug, and a reputation for intimidating not just the public, but also younger officers. The next morning, she called him into her office. Daniel strutted in, trying to look unbothered, but his hands betrayed him, clenched just a little too tight. "Officer Daniels," she said, gesturing to the thick file on her desk, "you've been given a lot of chances. Too many, in my opinion." He didn't respond. "So here's what's going to happen," she continued. "You can face formal disciplinary action, which could cost you your badge. Or you can undergo 6 months of mandatory retraining, 200 hours of community service, and a full performance review at the end. And trust me," she leaned forward just slightly, "I'll be watching." Daniels opened his mouth to argue, but the look in her eyes shut him down. She wasn't bluffing. "Fine," he muttered through gritted teeth. But Chief Morris wasn't just focused on him. Over the next few weeks, she rolled out department-wide reforms. Bias training for all officers. Community outreach programs where officers were required to engage with residents outside of enforcement roles. Stricter conduct policies with real consequences for violations. At first, there was pushback. Some officers complained. Others tried to test her. But she was firm, fair, and relentless. Slowly, the culture began to shift. And while Daniels hated every minute of his retraining at first, something unexpected started to happen. The more he was forced to listen, to the trainers, to the community, to his own peers, the more he began to see what Morris had been talking about. For the first time in his career, he was being held accountable. And for the first time, he started to realize how much he had been getting wrong. 6 months later, Officer Rick Daniels stood in front of a mirror, buttoning up his freshly pressed uniform. The man staring back at him didn't look the same as he had half a year ago. The arrogance in his stance was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: humility. He had completed every part of Chief Morris's requirements. The retraining had been brutal, not just physically, but mentally. He had sat through long sessions about de-escalation tactics, bias awareness, and community engagement. At first, he had rolled his eyes through all of it, convinced it was a waste of time. But somewhere along the way, things started to click. It wasn't a single aha moment. It was small things. Like the day he had to spend 8 hours at a community center, handing out food to families he'd once dismissed as troublemakers. Or when a teenage boy he'd wrongly assumed was a gang member shyly offered him a drawing he'd made. A drawing of Daniels handing him a basketball. That picture was still pinned to his locker. Daniels didn't become perfect overnight, but he began to understand something Chief Morris had said during that first meeting. Power means nothing without accountability. For the first time, he started to believe it. Meanwhile, Chief Morris's reforms had started to transform the department. Complaints against officers had dropped by nearly 40%. Community trust, something that had been nearly non-existent, was slowly rebuilding. Even officers who had resisted her changes were beginning to admit that the department felt different, in a good way. On this particular day, Morris had called for a department-wide meeting again, this time to review the progress made under her leadership. Daniels walked into the briefing room and found a seat near the back, trying to stay out of the spotlight. But Morris had other plans. "Officer Daniels," she called out, her voice steady as ever. "Care to join me up front?" A murmur went through the room. Everyone remembered how their new chief and Daniels had first met. Nobody had forgotten the story of the spit on the pavement. Daniels hesitated for a moment, then stood up and walked to the front. He didn't strut this time. He didn't puff out his chest. He just stood next to Chief Morris and waited. "This department," Morris began, addressing the room, "has come a long way. And while we still have a lot of work to do, I want to recognize progress when I see it. Officer Daniels," she turned to him briefly, "has completed 6 months of retraining and community service. But more importantly, he has demonstrated a willingness to change." Daniels cleared his throat. Public speaking wasn't his thing, but he knew this was his chance to say what needed to be said. "I used to think the badge meant I was in charge," he began, his voice quieter than usual but steady. "I thought respect came from making people fear me. But I was wrong. The truth is I wasn't protecting this community. I was controlling it. And I was wrong for that." The room was silent. Even the officers who had disliked him were listening. Daniels glanced at Morris, then back at the room. "Chief Morris didn't just give me a punishment. She gave me a chance to see things differently. And I'm grateful for that. I can't change the past, but I can do better moving forward. We all can." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, a few officers started to clap. It wasn't thunderous applause, but it was genuine. After the meeting, Daniels walked out of the station and found Chief Morris waiting by the steps, the same steps where they had first met. "You handled that well," she said. Daniels nodded. "I meant what I said. Thank you for not firing me." Morris gave a small, almost amused smile. "I didn't keep you because I thought you deserved it. I kept you because I thought you could learn. And you did." Daniels looked down at the pavement, the spot where his spit had once landed. He remembered how certain he had been that morning, how untouchable he had felt. And now he understood that true strength wasn't about dominance. It was about responsibility. As he turned to leave, Morris called after him. "Oh, and Daniels?" He looked back. "Next time you think about spitting," she said, her voice calm but firm, "make sure it's on the ground when you're cleaning it." For the first time in a long while, Daniels laughed, a real laugh, not the bitter one he used to hide behind. And in that moment, under the bright southern sun, it was clear this wasn't just a new chapter for him. It was a new chapter for the entire department.